and she changes the one word, mic drops, and walks away. And lo and behold, that word was the word that we transformed the entire company with and built the position on. And it ended up becoming what the word that the client most closely resonated with. So it can be really interesting. You can put in all this work and effort as a collaborative team, and we tend to want to put so much weight on the person who's putting in the hours, when in reality, it should be put on the value, not on the time.
Today's episode of the ProGuide is brought to you by Small Pond Productions, the producers of this podcast. If you're looking to boost your brand's voice with professional end-to-end podcast production, whether it's an interview show or telling stories with audio, we walk you through every step of the process to make you sound great. Head to our website and download the free Podcasting Made Simple guide. 8 critical things you need to know before launching your brand's podcast. It's all available at smallpond.productions. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of the Pro Guide, where we learn from thought leaders in business, technology, and creativity. And every so often you have a conversation that sticks with you and you just have to have the person back. And David Masters is absolutely in that category for me. A dear friend of mine, and just excited to be talking through elements of branding, identity. There's so much here. And so I dare not say just the word marketing because it feels like it leaves a vanilla, like just super lame taste in my mouth when I say that. But I think that there's so much more at play here. And I feel like one of David's and Jennifer's special talents are to get to the heart of elements of identity and elements of marketing that cause people to resonate with who they truly are in a way that just drives their bottom line forward, because there's an alignment there that's kind of like this chiropractic alignment with who they are and what they say that they're going to do. So without too much more buttering you up, David, thank you for joining us. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thanks, Andrew. Wow, I like the chiropractor analogy. It's
there.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You know, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the last conversation we had, just in case folks weren't there for it, definitely go back and listen to that first. But in case you just decide you're not going to listen to what I say, that's fine. I'll catch people up with the idea of becoming remarkable was this through line there. And talk to me about, like, when you say become remarkable, let's kind of level set folks one more time. What does that actually mean to you? And then maybe as an additional element, how has that definition shifted since we've chatted last?
So it's really interesting. And I know you're a huge Seth Godin fan, and most people go, "Oh, you got remarkable from a term he had used." And I didn't even know who he was when I started using the word. It actually came from my background in fine art. Because when I think about drawing, painting, any of those things, I think about communication. And so when I started focusing on brand and brand development and storytelling, I started thinking about an analogy to kind of explain what that process looked like and how we arrive at a certain thing. And so often we look for ways to add something to an equation, right? Like, let me add this thing and maybe make a few more colors and this value chain and this mode of operation, all those things that make up an organization. But the odd part is the remarkable thing actually came from the idea of charcoal and leaving a mark. And so when you make charcoal, they take a piece of wood, a raw piece of material, and I don't know if I've talked to you about this before, and they burn it, and they burn off all the impurities, and they leave it with something that can make a mark. And when I heard that, and when I started thinking about that process, I said that's a lot like branding. You're burning away everything that loses clarity for who you are and how you talk to your customers, how you are as an organization, and you're leaving a mark. You're leaving something that it ultimately becomes remarkable. And so kind of approached it from that lens, and that's how I landed on that whole idea of becoming remarkable. Yeah, I hope that.
Yeah, it's great. And what I love about that approach versus how people might traditionally think about something like branding or something like marketing is that those two concepts of branding and marketing are a downflow from that approach. Just to kind of tease this out a little bit, the difference between the logo that I've generated on ChatGPT versus, the sculpture of David is this approach about like what's inherently in there, and let's remove everything that's not there. That's a much different question and answering and design sequence that takes people on a much different journey, I think. But for those that have seen what happens when you release an identity versus trying to manufacture an identity, the results are much better. Speak a little bit about like why is the process in that direction versus somebody that comes up to you and says, David, like we're doing a launch campaign. I need to get, I need to get the branding out for our pizza shop as soon as possible. Like how would you reframe some of that conversation? And, you used even the term, the God of efficiency before we got on this call. I think there's a slice of that shows up here. Maybe speak a little bit to that process.
I think it's such a misnomer right now. We are in a culture that is so focused on efficiency and data and prescribed outcomes. Like this is the way it will be, that there is very little room for imagination and creativity and exploration. And, to be honest with you, when we start a project with a new client, oftentimes they don't really know what's wrong with their business. They just know something is wrong. Something's not connecting with their audience. There's something that they're offering isn't presenting in a way that is helpful. And so their bottom line is hurt. There's, like we've had, we can't hire, lots of different problems, but they can't really quite put their finger on it. And so our job really becomes getting to know them, to discover the problem, and then being able to then analyze it and prescribe a solution as an outside person. So you have to really understand the problem first. And I think if somebody comes to you and they say, design me a campaign, you have 3 months. One, I would never purport to be a marketer in the classic sense of marketing terms. But two, I think it's really odd that you want somebody to tell the world about you when they don't really know you. The who, you're putting what before who, you know what I mean? So if you do that, if you lead with what, it becomes a huge consequence for the output. But if you really understand who you are in the deepest sense, and I do believe that's what branding and brand building is really about, it's an understanding, a fundamental, deep understanding of who you are, then it changes everything about your organization. It makes your value chain really easy. It makes your messaging really easy. It makes the choice of choosing red, blue, purple, green, whatever font you have very easy. It makes the choice of choosing what type of people that you want to have in your organization or mentorship very easy because you understand who you are. And at the end of the day, brand, like anything else, like fine art, it's really a communication mechanism too. So you discover who you are, that wide open eye moment, this is who we are, and then you make a statement to the world. The world then gets to respond to that, and it becomes more than what the audience says you are. It becomes a dialogue between you and the audience. It's reciprocal. I think too often in hopes for efficiency and speed, we try to reduce it down to something that we can tangibly get behind. Oh, it must be this logo. It must be this font. It must be that catchphrase that they use. We all want something really simple and tangible to get behind. But the thing about feelings is, and I do believe that we resonate and feel brands, is feelings are multidimensional. It's not just I saw it. It's not just I, touched it. It's I saw it, I touched it, I smelled it, I felt it in my heart. And when people feel things in their heart, they can get past that God of efficiency, feel things in their heart. They're going to respond to a brand in a powerful way.
Yeah, there's a bit of a bridge, I think, between the thinking and the feeling. There's some of the translation that happens visually. It makes me think of, I love the quote from Tony Robbins, and he takes it from this idea of self-improvement when he talks about, you lose the weight or you get the haircut or you do some, you wear the fresh clothing or shirt or something, and you look in the mirror and you see yourself differently. And because you see yourself differently, you see yourself differently. And so I think there very often is this desire for us to see things externally that then validate who we feel like we are internally, but we need that feedback loop to show up first. When you're doing like a brand audit for somebody, let's say they've taken you on, they say, you know what, David, we really need some help defining ourselves so that we have that internal, control or that internal identity that shows up for ourselves. Is there a question or a concept that most business owners are really afraid to answer honestly about their own brand. What shows up? What's the question that when you ask it, they're like,
Hmm.
we don't really want to go there, or hide or pick up that rock to see what's under it. Is there anything that shows up in that department for them?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people are afraid of how much blood they put on the page, and the thing is, if you don't let people in, you're never going to connect with them. So I would say we start with an exercise usually, and I probably maybe mentioned this to you before. We do a brand obituary for
Okay.
new clients we
Yeah.
work with, and we ask them, if your brand died right now, what would people remember about it? And it's really interesting because if you push them a little bit, a lot of times to get past the how much money they made, or how they presented themselves from a visual identity standpoint, you get to the heart of it, of how people really engage with something. You uncover a lot. And then I know you and I had talked a little bit of back and forth before about like what is versus the outcome that is hoped for. And so like you
Yeah.
could juxtapose that with the hoped for obituary. The if things went really well, if I could change my trajectory right now as an organization, if we could change that and we could go this way, this is what people might remember about us, right? And so I think getting them to get really clear, from that standpoint, maybe it's a little bit morbid, but it's, if you guys were gone right now, would you even be remembered? Would people
Mm.
care? And if they did remember you, what would they remember about you? It's an interesting thought. I've gotten some really good answers. I've written some that have gotten some interesting responses just because I'm nerdy like that. I wrote one for Saturn Motors once because I, just found it really comical. And I wrote one for Taco Bell and posted it on LinkedIn, and people about lost their minds when I said that the Taco Bell brand was dead. But to be honest, it feel like not great, no bueno right now. Yeah, I'm probably gonna get some backlash for that. But yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe when you interact with their brand, you feel like you're dead after. No, there's a. Is there anything that shows up for you when we talk about? Actually, let me back up. Let me talk about like what I do see for what you've described thus far. This identity first behavior, and then the brand obituary. There's some parallels with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, where first things first is the first habit. The personality ethic versus the character ethic. I really am wanting to operate from who I truly am, my character ethic, my values, my missions, my beliefs. And then second thing is beginning with the end in mind, the end of our brand, looking back over there at the casket of our brand. Are they giving the right funeral message or eulogy about my brand? Is that, and then using that to kind of shape the delta between where I am now and what's over there. When people are going through this work and they're starting to say, okay, I need to be making decisions differently, is there any common, maybe not common, but an unglamorous branding decision that ends up really mattering a lot more than people traditionally expect it would? So like when they first start out and it's like, okay, you might gloss over this, but I really want to take some time to zoom in on what you think or what the answer is here, because downstream, it might feel like a 1 degree delta, but you're going to be 30 degrees off if you don't get this thing right from the get-go.
it's gonna sound really weird, maybe from a
Go for it.
guy,
Yeah.
who's in design school. I don't really care about fonts and colors and logos. I mean, I enjoy them. What designer doesn't like to make them? But I don't care about them as much as I care about effective outcomes and people.
Hmm.
So I would say that if your team isn't aligned, if the people in your organization aren't aligned with what you're rolling out, then either A, you're not rolling out something that they can stand behind, for that could be for a number of different reasons, and maybe they're just, not ready to accept that. Maybe they need more time to accept that. Um, or possibly they aren't the right people in your organization. And I know nobody wants to think about it like that because we want to rally around the people on our team, but and honestly, everybody's worked with them, right? The people in an organization where you go through the process of really diving deep into figuring out who you are, what you stand for, what you value, and where you want to steer that ship. And then once in a while, you get that person who just I'm not doing it. I don't want to go that way. And then you have to kind of ask yourself, or if you don't want to go that way, either one, you can align, or two, I think you might need to walk the proverbial plank, so to
Yeah.
speak. And
Yeah.
this might not be your boat. Not truly kill them. But I
We're not
just
talking
for
about actual, this is metaphors, people. That's right.
yeah. So I think making sure that your organization is aligned, and I think that's done in a lot of different ways. One of the things that we are constantly dealing with, when even with from an identity standpoint, is brand governance.
Hmm.
Making sure that, it sounds really silly, but this is where like the identity does come in. It's like, hey, did an activation of some Instagram ads, and I'll review them as a strategist, and I'll say, well, none of these are speaking in the voice, the tone, I mean, again, if I did reduce it down to colors, the fonts, all those things that become the voice and the tone. And so you're not actually aligning with what we're wanting to put out in the world. And so is it what we're putting out in the world, or is it you,
Hmm.
and because it doesn't get to be the everyone show, it has to be a show of unity. And so I think when people aren't aligned, you will quickly notice that organization has a failure in it, and that it's sure to crumble. The brand is sure to fail.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would probably argue gives you a creative advantage in some ways is that you and your wife Jennifer actually work on this thing together.
Mm.
Is there anything that working alongside of her has taught you about collaboration? Because you've been on normal teams, air quote normal, normal teams before too. But has working directly with her, with these multiple hats on your roles, taught you something about collaboration that maybe a normal team never could?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good question. Yes, the answer is yes, resounding
Yeah.
yes. There are different ways to look at work, and what we set out to do is be an integrated life. We wanted to live in an integration. We built a studio on the back of our property where we handle our clients. We for up until recently, we homeschooled our kids. When we felt like we had an answer to one of the problems we were solving for a client, we quickly were able to run out to the studio, whiteboard it, solve it. So working together. But then there are days where, you know, life happens outside of work. And I think what we want to do is segment, this is work, and this is house, or this is children, and this is, and in actuality, something that I'm learning and I'm having to learn, and I failed at it a lot, to be completely candid with everybody, is sometimes I'm so quick to protect the work time, because we're taught this 9 to 5 lifestyle in the United States, that I drop the ball, or I'm prone to drop the ball inside the family time, or inside
Mhm.
the time with my wife. And I would say vice versa. Like, there are times where it's making that shift back to work, doesn't look quite so linear. And then there's also an interesting thing where, working with my wife, there are times where, like, I'll give you an example. I was working for 3 months on this brand ladder, developing the strategy and this architecture for this company we were working on, and I was proud of it. I was excited about it. My wife and I had gone back and forth, and then she comes in one day and she looks at it and she says, that word is wrong. And she changes the one word, mic drops, and walks away. And lo and behold, that word was the word that we transformed the entire company with and built the position on. And it ended up becoming what the word that the client most closely resonated with. So it can be really interesting. You can put in all this work and effort as a collaborative team. And we tend to want to put so much weight on the person who's putting in the hours, when in reality, it should be put on the value, not on the time. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Like,
it
there's
does so much so.
value just in the thing, in the exercise, and in the thought of knowing what to do, versus just, I need to put in more hours in hopes of getting something done, and spinning your wheels, you know?
That's right. That's right. Napoleon Hill always talks about the concept of the mastermind and how it can be comprised of three people, five people, but also the most powerful mastermind in the world is a husband-wife combo, and how just something magical shows up when the two of them are working on a given project or idea together that just wasn't there with any single one of them. And so I'm curious about, and you've alluded to this a little bit, but I'd love for you to dig into this just a little bit deeper. When the two of you are disagreeing on something in the creative aspect, how do you resolve that? And has the process of going through that ever really made the work better in certain areas or certain aspects where it's like, okay, the fact that we didn't see the same thing the same way and we both brought different perspectives to it actually sharpened how this end result came to be in a much better way where it didn't happen before.
Oh yeah, I can tell you as much as I lean on the artistic side, I'm also sometimes 30,000 foot view, and so sometimes I'll have, I don't know, I almost like to call them my Goodyear blimp mindset, where he's kind of floating up in space somewhere, and Jennifer, she's like, "That's great, but that's not going to work, and people won't
Yeah.
actually receive that." I get that a lot with copy that I write for our own website.
Hmm.
I live in this poetic land of, as a past songwriter in a band, and and as an artist, I like words, and enjoy the conversation. And sometimes, she can be so helpful in that she's like, well, that's great, but I think there's a better, more clear way to communicate that. I can tell you also, I can think back about recently, we had a huge photo shoot for a brand launch that we were putting together, and I had all these models picked out, and I was like, these are the ones. And she looked at them and she said, nope. like, she's
Yeah.
like, not the right age, not the right height, not the, like, she went through this whole list and she rearranged and called them all. And then I came back in the room, and lo and behold, I was like, wow, oh, you were right. I was completely off base. I was completely wrong, and it would have been a horrible photo shoot had I gone through with it. It really is the other half of a coin. If on the best days, and on the worst days too, because it's, when you have the worst in somebody, they have the worst in you, you have the worst in them, and I think that that's marriage. And that's business partnership too. It's not always going to be so easy and linear.
Yeah. One of the relationships I treasure the most, a mentor of mine, his name is David. He's invested so many years of just his life and wisdom in me, and he taught me this concept. It has helped me so many times in our marriage. He says that there's this concept of the red flag. He says whenever his wife would look at something he's planning on doing or thinking about doing, and there's not necessarily like the articulatable logic behind the reason of whatever she's thinking, but the substance is there. Hey, we
Right.
shouldn't go in that direction. I don't think this thing is it. I'm not sure what this is about, but I'm feeling X. When I was like leaning hard into Y, I have never regretted accepting and being like, nope, no questions asked. Let's go with where you're feeling the red flag because I don't know what it is. I can't articulate it. I'm sure there's an explanation for it. But in some ways, I think, for those of us that are, faith based, I think that there is like an element of mutual submission that shows up there where it's like, hey, I'm valuing you as a unique soul in this universe that God created. And I'm not putting, my opinions on a pedestal saying, hey, there's a slice of God's image that I see in you, and I'm validating that as well here. And because of that, it's like the better picture shows up. That's really cool. One or two more questions before I let you go. One is, I think half of the people, maybe that's a strong number, but I know many of our listeners are probably founders or solo builders, or maybe somebody that can't necessarily afford to get their brand wrong, but they aren't necessarily in a space to do the immediate hard work of identifying themselves as a brand and how that might look or how they might articulate that. If they do have some space and time, though, maybe not a huge budget, but what's a really high leverage move that they could take toward making themselves, their brand, remarkable? Maybe a question they could ask, a thing they could listen to, a resource they could engage with. What is like that move? You've got, not to put you on the spot, you've got 24 or 48 hours. You've got to make a move that's going to really give you an ROI on your brand. And you haven't really taken much of a step yet, but you've got a product, a vision, Where do you head? What do you do?
I think if you go back to what we said in the beginning about burning off all the unnecessary things, there has to be that one starting spot. When I teach drawing students, I was thinking about this morning. I was teaching them organizational line drawing. I teach at a couple of colleges around too, and um, I tell them start from one spot, and we'll call this the truth object, right? This, and you're going to build the entire drawing off this truth object, the scale, everything. And so they'll go through that process. And I said, but if you change the truth object midway through, you're never going to be completely accurate. Your scale is going to be completely wrong. And so
Mm.
I think when you start to be able to concisely and clearly articulate a few things, one is what do you want and how do you get there?
Hmm.
And that the bridge between those two, that would be a really good starting spot. And then the other thing that you have to be able to, I think, articulate is what value do you offer to the world that is unique and tangible at the same time? Because I think in one sense, I was talking to someone yesterday. We all have, like, in the branding world, in this world that I live in, we all have different approaches to how we might handle the problem. And we all deep down inside have some sort of ego bent, and we're like, my solution is the best solution. Every business
Right.
owner thinks that my solution is
That's
the
right.
best solution. But a comment that was made to me that kind of stuck with me was this idea that you really do have to remove your ego from it, and you have to put it into a tangible category that somebody can understand.
Hmm.
Deep down inside, you might offer something really unique and special, and you should hold on to that and build it from an internal posture. But you also have to be able to present something in a way that is tangible. I'll give you a really good example. I go to stores a lot and I collect positioning statements. Sometimes I'll write them down. I have my phone is full of them, and I keep them. And there's one I've mentioned it at a few talks before. There's one for this company called Vacation Sunscreen. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Hmm.
I really enjoy their brand. And I was walking down the aisle at Target, as you do, because that's where
Yes, you do.
cool kids hang out.
That's right.
And there was a POP display for Vacation Sunscreen that said the leisure enhancing sunscreen. And I thought to myself, that's really interesting because there's a lot of sunscreens out there, lots of them. But this one's a leisure enhancing sunscreen. And so what does that mean? Well, the coolest thing about this company, and from what I've been reading, they put, certain scents in there that smell like the vacation you would imagine from the 90s when you were a kid. All their models look like 90s, like with the boom boxes and the bright pink and green spandex. It feels like there's probably salt from the ocean in it.
Hmm.
Everything about that says this is what it feels like to be on vacation. This is what it feels like to have leisure. And so they're doing two things, right? One, they're offering a unique value. This is a unique position that we can occupy without sacrificing a simple, tangible thing that people can lock onto, which is it's sunscreen. So at the end of the day, right, it's sunscreen, but it's also a very unique sunscreen. And so I would say, like, to new companies, what is it that is your secret sauce? Where do you positionally stand? And it's really hard to position too, because, nothing new under the sun, right? So you have to really be able to uh, create a category, and you have to do it in a psychological way that, kind of enters the mind and the heart. But at the same time, you have to be able to give something to somebody that they can understand. You know what I mean? The best companies do this. The best companies sell the feeling, but they also are a tangible thing at the same time. Apple, right? It is a
Sorry.
computer. It's a simple thing. It's a computer. It's a working solution. But in actuality, Steve Jobs was selling an optimized, intuitive machine and lifestyle around intuitive living. And I think that he successfully did that. It's an integrated platform and ecosystem in one place. But it's technology. It's a computer. It's an iPod, if anybody remembers those. It's a
That's
phone.
right.
That's what it is. And so I would say that, and figure those things out, and figure out you know how much of the secret sauce are you willing to keep and stand behind, and how much are you willing to let go, and kind of figure that out. Yeah, burn everything that doesn't doesn't leave a mark is kind of what we say. You know what I mean? If it's not going to leave a mark, if it's not remarkable, get rid of it.
I love that phrase, burn everything that doesn't leave a mark. What a good conversation. I'm really grateful for your time. I'm also grateful for your thoughtfulness that you bring to not only this conversation, but I know the brands that you engage with. If folks are interested in getting in touch with you and Jennifer and, finding out, David, it sounds like you thought about this a lot more than I have. I'm not going to do this brand exercise within the next 24, 48 hours, but I know I need something, The next best thing is I can actually just, talk to you and have you step me through it. How can folks do that? How can they find what you're up to and stay in your orbit?
Yeah. So they can go and find us, our website, which it's funny as it sounds, we're updating our web copy and everything right now too. davidmastersgroup.com is our website. And I get this all the time. You named it after yourself. No, he started as a freelance company. And when my wife and I decided we wanted to co-found this and live this life that we're living together, we just, we're already too far down the pipeline to change the title. And so we just said, well, we'll just put group on the end and we'll call it that,
That's right.
So that was the solution. You can also find me at LinkedIn at, I think it's the David Masters is my / I don't do social media, believe it or not. Besides that, I use LinkedIn. I don't use Instagram and Facebook and definitely not TikTok. No one wants to see me dance. Most of the people are surprised. They're like, you do brand and you're not on social media. I just not my personal preference, I suppose. But you know what? The other thing I would say too is shoot me an email at david@davidmastersgroup. And honestly, every single thing that we have done has always begun with a conversation. And I really, truly believe this. People are an end in themselves, not a means to an end. I have never, ever once turned down just a conversation just to have it because it's worth having a one-on-one conversation. Because you know what? You never know where it could lead, and you never know the new and exciting people that will get brought your way, and you never know who you're going to learn from and touch anyway. So yeah, if you have a branding question or problem, happy to chat anytime, and I know my wife would be too. So, and she's way smarter than me. So,
No. And I could vouch for that too. The any conversation, anytime. Our thanks to Josh Emmerich for that. My goodness, we wouldn't have talked if it weren't for him. So, Josh, if you're listening, I don't know if you've made it all the way through a half-hour podcast or not, but if you have, here you are. You're in the SEO now, at least for the transcript. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, David. This has been great. I appreciate your wisdom that you've been sharing with us today.
Thanks. Appreciate you as always, man. Much love, dude.
Mutual. Yep. And our thanks to all of you for listening. If you're looking for a quick way to make our day, a review in iTunes or subscribing to this podcast would mean the world to us. Our thanks to Small Pond Productions for sponsoring. And this was the ProGuide. Learn from leaders, change your life. See you, everybody.